People arriving in Northfield for the first time frequently speak of its charm. And much of that charm is reflected in the downtown area along Division Street, which has almost a movie set quality of Americana about it, except that Northfield's Division Street is truly more than just a series of facades. Step into some of the classic Division Street stores and you'll find out why.
Have you worn ballet shoes before?
Oh no, I'm just taking it now as a PE course at
Okay,
Carleton.
so if I find something like this, it's going to fit that foot.
Yeah.
And that foot's, I bet, size, size, okay.
9.5.
Very good, we got them. And they're. What you ought to know too is that ballet shoes, they have no left or right. I think they were designed for busy college students who didn't want to have to make any extra decisions.
Yeah.
Bob Jacobson's father purchased this store, Jacobson's, in 1947. Bob owned it for a time. Then he passed it on to his son, Raleigh Jacobson, who Bob says really wanted to take over the family business. But there's seldom a day Bob, who actually believes in the revolutionary concept of good personalized customer service, isn't in the store helping out.
I guess at about the age of 5 or 6, I met a man by the name of J.C. Penney. My dad introduced him. He was proud to introduce me, and he hoped I didn't say anything bad at the time. But Mr. Penney was running a store that he had at one time called Golden Rule. And I feel like that was the way in which the Penney Company philosophy was established. And I just remember being with a man who I worshiped, my dad, constantly, that's the way it was. I was ingrained in that way.
Bob and Raleigh, along with many other Division Street store owners, exemplify a spirit struggling to stay alive in small-town America, struggling as swiftly moving economic forces change and often batter communities across the nation. It is a spirit which built Northfield and which has helped it succeed as a community.
A common theme or thread that's been around a long time is a real interest in the community by the citizens. They take an ownership interest and they're involved in their community.
I think a lot of what was initially started here as a community still remains very important aspects of our community, and I think people recognized it then and still recognize it today.
Northfield began as a business enterprise, really. Founded in 1855 by John and Ann North with purposeful intention to be a robust business community, to be a place of opportunity, to be a place of growth for those willing to take a chance and work hard. Nearly a century and a half later, the North's vision has created a town that has a very sound financial base sustained by a manufacturing sector, agriculture, 2 colleges, and retail and service businesses. Agriculture and the colleges will be the subjects of other video programs in the Northfield Community Video Project series. Manufacturing, retail, and service are the focus here. Water power from the Cannon River drove the first business enterprises in Northfield, the sawmills. When the trees ran out, the sawmills became flour mills. A booming farm economy in the area kept the mills running constantly. The flour milling business culminated in what is today's largest industry and employer in Northfield, Malt-O-Meal Company, which began operations in Northfield in 1927 under the name of the Campbell Cereal Company. Railroading complemented the evolving Northfield economy early on. The first railroad came to Northfield in 1865 through the efforts of local business leaders who correctly believed the establishment of a rail line through Northfield was essential if the milling business were to flourish. The existence of large rail yards in Northfield today may come as a surprise to those unfamiliar with that side of the Malt-O-Meal plant away from Highway 19. Late in the 19th century, Northfield became known as a dairy farm center. This led to the establishment of several creameries in the area. At one point, Northfield was even known as the Holstein capital of the world. In 1920, the Northfield Foundry and Machine Company opened, drawn to Northfield because of railroad access. It is still in operation today, manufacturing woodworking equipment for industrial applications. Northfield Foundry's machining capabilities made it possible for several other Northfield companies to get a start here. By the middle of the 20th century, new innovative industries such as Sheldall and Northfield Freezing had also established themselves in Northfield. Sheldall built the first telecommunications satellites, Echo 1 and Echo 2, right here in Northfield. And Northfield Freezing, now owned by Frigoscandia Equipment, developed a new type of industrial food freezer in worldwide use today that permitted the fast freezing of commercial food products in high volumes. It should be clear that, if anything, Northfield loves variety, and this variety is a major reason Northfield stays an economically healthy town.
We have several different kinds of industries and businesses, and the diversity of our population, the diversity of job opportunities. I think all of that actually creates different opportunities and makes it an attractive place to be.
One of the advantages of Northfield is that we've got a diverse economic base, so that when something happens like Fairway Foods deciding that they couldn't stay in that business any longer, it doesn't have the impact of a single economy, single unit-based community. It isn't a Boeing deciding they're going to cut back in Seattle. It's a whole different ballgame.
Division Street has always been the heart of Northfield's retail and service businesses and remains so even today, although in recent years retail and service growth has been occurring off Division Street and along Highway 3, and that is now beginning to accelerate. The first retail businesses included a general store which opened in 1856 on Bridge Square, a hotel, a meat shop, and 2 carriage and blacksmith shops. Early service professionals included carpenters, blacksmiths, and 2 physicians. The First National Bank opened in 1873. The years between 1890 and 1915 were especially robust for retail and service in Northfield. Another spurt of growth in retail and service occurred after the Great Depression and lasted through World War II.
Like a lot of small communities, Northfield used to be a real center of commerce, maybe, for an area. If there was our area, you had the Twin Cities, but in the past that was a goodly distance away. People didn't just go there all the time. So Faribault was an area, and probably Northfield was an area that sort of split up this. It's where people came to do commerce.
Traditional retailing, such as department, clothing, and shoe stores, stayed strong in Northfield until the late 1980s.
We went through a lot of what a lot of communities our size did throughout the 80s, and excuse me, our change really didn't occur till the late 80s. But I think a lot of retailing occurred in a half an hour, 60-mile radius around us, which then competed with us.
So what will the 21st century mean for business and financial vitality in Northfield? What about those swiftly moving economic forces sweeping the world? How are they affecting this community? One way to deal with change is to not be afraid of it, to tackle it head-on like the Jacobsons. While they continue to believe in old-fashioned service, for example, they don't believe their service has to be old-fashioned. And then there are those who see great opportunity in change. Norman Butler recently purchased this building on Division Street. In 1999, he gutted what was once a beauty shop on its back or riverside and turned it into a British pub.
It became obvious that as well as the marvellous river aspect that Northfield has, which is to a great extent underutilised, there also seems to be a big need in this community for more food and drink and social opportunity. And a pub addresses all these issues, particularly as it's located here, right next to the river.
What's it like for Butler and Northfield 1 year later?
We seem to have been very well received, from what I can tell, by the townspeople and the colleges. We have a fairly good mix of people, old, young, our townspeople, students, professors, all the faculty.
Many Northfielders, newcomers and old-timers alike, argue that Northfield must do whatever it takes business-wise to adapt to the new economic forces. Others urge caution, however, or even express a clear opinion that certain recent business developments are not what are needed in Northfield. The construction of the Target retail store on the south end of town has become the focal point, or target if you like, of this debate.
People tend to look at Northfield and say, gee, I'd like it to be as I remember it when I came.
Change is difficult, and change seems to come faster all the time at us, and we have to adapt. And I think that causes hardships, it causes frustration, and when you don't know what the impact of things are going to be, there is kind of that fear of the unknown.
When this large retail operation opens on the south of town, we will have unleashed an economic force. In my career in the financial markets, what I've learned is that no one is bigger than the market, but that market is enormous. In Northfield, we've probably had a somewhat more controllable market to deal with, and while we recognize some forces of change have already impacted us, there are ways of dealing with that change where you don't introduce an uncontrollable element into what exists.
I'm disappointed that people felt that they needed to have another community form, because what they're trying to put up, what they at least have on the drawing board, would look like another community. I didn't think we needed that.
We've got a number of things, I think, in this town that people have been looking at, including the way in which our town is focused on its center, and people are trying to create that. Disney is trying to create that type of community in Florida, and in some ways it feels a bit artificial because it's meant to be this way. It's created to be that way. It's evolved naturally here.
Downtown in England, in Penrith and in Cranfield, where I come from, they're all rolling their eyes and saying, oh, you know, what's happening? Tesco, or if you like, Target is coming onto the edge of town. We're done for. You know, and if you say you're done for, you will be done for. But a lot of towns are also saying, well, we've got to change, we've got to evolve, we've got to get, we've got to actually look at what needs, what is missing if these traditional shops are replaced by the big box retailers.
There are a lot of things that we can do to build downtown. We can always also encourage certain types of retail that aren't served by a Target in any case. So I don't consider it to be a major threat to downtown. I consider it to be an opportunity to sit back and say, all right, how do we make downtown more viable than it is? And it's already quite viable.
Many people in town worry that the Target debate is harming the community. For others, well, lively debate in Northfield is part of what makes this town tick.
I've heard people say that. Well, it's just awful how people are so riled up about this. Well, that's what happens when people are interested. It'd be a lot worse if nobody gave a hoot one way or another.
People do get together and they talk, and it's one of the most active communities I've ever seen.
Your toes don't feel like they're jammed up like this. That's a good fit. Remember, there is no left, there is no right.
Of course, then there's the perspective that only the wisdom of age and many years of experience can bring.
If you're wondering, is it going to drive us out of business? I certainly don't know. I'll try hard not to. But if it does, I suppose I'll have to find out what their policies are on hiring old men and how they treat elderly applicants.
That's the spirit. So far, the vision John and Ann North had for Northfield has stayed alive. It is a robust business community. It is a place of opportunity. It is a place of growth for those willing to take a chance and to work hard. But maintaining a vision for a town requires one must-have ingredient.
I've had the privilege to meet a lot of people in this community and surrounding area, and to work with a lot of people and find out there's a wonderful group of people here that give a lot, give up their time, give up their resources without ever expecting anything back. And they do it because they really care about their community and they care about their neighbor and they want people to do well here. And like I said, I think that's our greatest asset, and I love being part of that.
I think that in some ways, we are experiencing a new Northfield, but in most ways, we're just expanding and growing the basic foundation of our community, and others are participating in that. Again, we're a family-friendly community. We have a high standard of living. We have places for people to shop, to work, to recreate, and those things are not new. They're just mostly being rediscovered. Now, as a result of that rediscovery, yes, we are having a lot of growth in the residential community, and in that sense, it is a new Northfield.
I've been here 9 years, and around that time, and people, affirm that around 9 years ago, you could fire a cannon down Division Street and not hit anybody on a typical midday during the midweek, and certainly on a Sunday. That's no longer the case. The place is busier. It's more difficult to find parking. Just on a sort of factual level, as opposed to impressionistic, there's been a tremendous increase in housing in Northfield. It was entirely predictable, totally unopposed. Whether that's right or wrong depends on who you talk to. And along with that becomes a much greater interest from developers and business people that Northfield is a place worth investing in. Always has been, and is now, I believe that view is confirmed as each month goes by, as each year goes by, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years.
So what's really happening is a rebirth and a reawakening of the attributes and how they're appreciated by others, not just those living here.
The merchants down here, we had talked once how so much of the Northfield downtown development and different festival days type of thing are all geared towards downtown Northfield, and yet even though we're Northfield, it's a totally different entity, and so we sort of call it the Southfield, and we also are local people and would love to be able to support us and sort of the different type of Northfield.
Yeah, to be frank, I think we did look at the downtown. I think of course when you open a new business, you're looking at the market. So we looked at the downtown, but there were certain things that we wanted to do. We needed to have a nice open look. The theme was it should be a simple and elegant and nice open space, and we did not find any space in downtown. So then we were kind of driving one day on Highway 3, and we just saw this lease sign at the Jazz Knox, and so we decided to open it here. So it was more sheer of, I think, not availability of space in downtown.
We put the business down here just because we felt that people were looking for that. We had quite a few people tell us that they would like to have a coffee house on the south side of town, something that was had easy access. And so we went with this one in hopes of, with the development that was going on around here with Community Bank coming in and with all the different housing developments, it would give people an option, because the people who weren't going downtown were going out of town. And the reason they weren't going downtown was either it wasn't there or they didn't like the parking situation. So we were just giving them an option to be able to stay in Northfield and still support local, but with a different location.
When we talked 5 years ago, if you recall, the big hot issue was the Target at that time,
yeah.
And some people it was the end of the world, and other people felt there was an opportunity. What is your thinking now 5 years later about it? You were kind of in favor of, if I recall.
Yes, yeah, and I spoke in favour of Target both in the City Council and at Carlton when they were having their debates. I felt at that time that one of the biggest problems Northfield has or had was the number of people leaving town to go and get their basics and essentials, as well as their entertainment and food in the Twin Cities.
See, I think as long as the downtown stays fresh and creative, I don't think they have any reason to worry. I really don't. And I think that the more businesses we can get in town, whether it's on Highway 3 or downtown, the more people are going to stay here and shop and eat and everything like that.
I feel that sense of belongingness, and I think I'm really fortunate. I think to have made the right decision to be in Northfield. I think it's a very welcoming community, I would say.
Do you believe the character of the town is changing?
I hope the character of our town is not changing, because that's the basis of our strength, and that's the basis of our economic development. That's the basis of our families and churches and schools. So I hope the foundation really is not changing.